So you're probably thinking, why are we going back to graphing? Today we're talking about graphing the vertex, and the vertex form of the quadratic equation we couldn't have done when we were graphing before in sections 9.1 and 9.2 because there was some information we didn't quite know how to do yet. This is actually going to make graphing a lot easier. The vertex form is y minus k equals a times, in parentheses, x minus h quantity squared. In order to do this, you are going to find that the vertex of the parabola is h comma k. That a determines whether it's going to go up or down. So if a is positive, it's going to open up, and if a is negative, it's going to open down, just like the minimum and maximum that we talked about earlier on in this year. And set your x equal to 0 to find the y-intercept, and set your y equal to 0 to find your x-intercept. We'll talk about all of those. We're going to graph them. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite some things in vertex form. So this equation right here is not at all in vertex form. The first thing we need to do is we need to identify its a, b, and c. So we know that a equals 1 because that's with my x squared. B equals negative 6. And c equals 0 because it's not listed here. I need to find the opposite of b over 2a. Now, if you remember back to when we graphed, this was how you find the vertex. And in order to put it in vertex form, I've got to find the vertex. So the opposite of b over 2a is 6 over 2 times 1 is just 6 over 2, which is 3. So since 3 is my first number, I'm going to plug it back in for x up here in both places. And I'm going to find, so I know that 3 is my h. 3 equals my h. I'm going to find my k by plugging 3 in. So I have y equals 3 squared, which is 9, minus 3 times 6, which is 18. So 9 minus 18 gives me a negative 9. So now I know that my k is negative 9. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. Now that I have that information, what I really need is my h and my k, and I'm going to set it up in my quadrant or my vertex form. So I'm going to get y minus my k, which would now be the opposite of negative 9, which is positive 9, equals a, which I have up here. Which we know is 1. I'm going to take that times x. I'm going to leave my x and y always constant in there, minus my h, which is 3, quantity squared, and that is in vertex form. Okay, we're moving to the next problem, and here I need to set up my equation again as in standard form, so I'm going to have to move my 1 over. So I now have y equals negative 2x squared minus x, and I'm moving my 1 over so it becomes minus 1. So my a equals negative 2, my b equals negative 1, and my c equals negative 1. And I don't really need my c in this case, so but it's still there. The opposite of b, it should be a positive 1 over 2 times a, which would be a negative 4. So negative 1/4 is my new h, negative 1/4. So once I have my negative 1/4, I can plug it in to my equation up top up here. So I'm going to do y equals negative 2 times a negative 1/4 times a negative 1/4 is a positive 1/16 minus, which now becomes plus 1/4 minus 1. That becomes a negative 2 over 16, which is a negative 1/8 plus 1/4 minus 1, and let's just change that to an 8 over 8 because I'm going to need a common denominator here. So let's do 2 over 8 and 8 over 8. So negative 1 plus 2 is going to be 1 minus 8 is going to be 7/8, which is now going to equal my k. Okay, so I shrunk this up and highlighted what I need here. So I need my a, my h, and my k. Let's go ahead and rewrite my equation, which would be y minus k. In this case, that would be 7/8. Look at that, 7. Equals a, which is negative 2, times x. We want to keep that constant, minus h, which in this case is plus 1/4 quantity squared. Okay, so that is my equation in vertex form here. Moving to number 3, I know that my A equals 9, my B equals 3, and my C equals a negative 10. From here, I'm going to do the opposite of B over 2A, so negative 3 over 2 times 9, which would be 18. So negative 3 over 18 can reduce down to a negative 1 over 6. That's going to be my h. I'm writing really big, so it's going to have to get smaller. I'm going to plug that in. So it's 9 times a negative 1/6 times a negative 1/6 is 1 over 36 plus 3 times negative 1/6 minus 10. So that would be a 9 over 36 would become 1/4. And a negative 3 over 6 would become a negative 1/2 minus 10. So let's go ahead and find a common denominator, which would be 4. So I've got 1 minus 2, so that would become a negative 1/4, and a negative 10, which would equal a negative 10, negative 10, and 1/4, and that is my k. I'm now ready to write it in vertex form, so y minus k in this case is a positive 10 and 1/4 is equal to a, which would be 9, times x minus h, which is actually plus 1/6 quantity squared. So I know it looks a little messy, but let's now try to graph it. First thing is you don't have graphs on here. I apologize. I'm super sorry, you should. But let's go ahead and work with these. My vertex is going to be hk. So if we can remember that hk is my vertex, let's look at our formula. Okay, so in this case, we've got my h and my k. My h is the opposite of this and the opposite of this. So if I'm going to write that out, my hk would be 1, 2. So on my graph, you are going to have to make one, but on my graph, let's graph that. So if I go over 1 up 2, and I plot that point right there, that is actually going to be also my axis of symmetry. So I can draw a line down if I want to. And you're going to see now where we can go from here. A is going to determine if it's going to open up or down. And so that's going to be here, which is just 1. It's a positive 1, which means it's going to open up. And then from here, I'm able to see that I want to plug in 0 for x to solve for y. So if I plug in 0 for x, I get y minus 2 is now equal to, well, 0 minus 1 is a negative 1 quantity squared. So y minus 2, a negative 1 times a negative 1 is just a positive 1. I'm going to add 2. So y equals 3 in this case. So my y-intercept is going to be at 3. It's actually going to be 0, 3, because I plugged in 0 for x. So I go over 0, up 3. And you're going to see that that is where my y-intercept is located. And if we know anything about an axis of symmetry, I know that the other side is going to be the exact same. Now, if I'm going to go back in and I'm going to plug in now 0 for y, I have 0 minus 2 equals x minus 1 quantity squared. Well, that's going to be a negative 2, so let's just get rid of that. And then I can square root both sides. And if you notice right here, I have this square root of a negative number, which is going to be no solution. Well, that means that I am not going to have anywhere on the x-axis where my parabola is going to cross. You'll see that I'm able to make a nice, easy parabola with these points right here, which makes graphing a lot easier than setting up a table. And for my x-intercept, there is none. Okay, let's move to the next one and see if it's going to be just as easy. And here we go. So I know that my HK is going to be my vertex. So that would be 3, -8. And let's do that one. Okay, and so now let's go ahead and graph that again. I'm sorry, I don't have a graph for you. Down 8 is going to be right about here. And that's going to be my axis of symmetry again. I like to draw the line just so that you can see right where it's at. And from here, I just need to find my other values. So let's plug in, let's do for y this time first. So if I plug in 0 for y, that's 0 plus 8 equals 2 times x minus 3 quantity squared. So my 0 goes away. I can divide everything by 2, which means those 2's cancel. So I now have 4 equals x minus 3 quantity squared. I can find the square root of both, and here I have positive, which tells me I'm going to have 2 answers. So I'm going to have positive 2 and negative 2. So I'm going to have 2 equals x minus 3, and I'm going to have a negative 2 equals x minus 3. So if I add my 3 to both sides, I'm going to get x equals 5. That's going to be one of my intercepts for my x-axis. Oh, why is that not writing? And then if I add my 3 here, that's going to be x equals 1. So 5 and 1 are going to be my 2 points. So I'm going to go over 5 on the x-axis and over 1 on the x-axis. And what do you know? They are symmetrical. Okay, moving on, I am able to now find my y-intercept. And now I just have to find my y-intercept. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x on the other one. So I now have y plus 8 equals 2 times 0 makes it negative 3 quantity squared. Let's do that negative 3 squared first. So that's going to give me 9 times 2, which would be 18. So y plus 8 equals 18. I'm going to have to subtract my 8. And that's going to give me y equals 10. So on my y-axis, I know that that's going to be 10. I can make it all the way up here. And again, it's going to be symmetrical. So it's over one more right here. And it makes a nice smooth parabola for me. All right. I'm going to try something a little bit different this time, and we're going to go over this next one in class tomorrow, and it's going to be the first thing that we're going to do. So hopefully it helps you understand it a little bit better.